Okay, so hello and welcome to Ethereum Classic Community Call number 11 on the 1st of February 2022. ETC Community Calls is a weekly voice chat that happens on the Ethereum Classic Discord server every Tuesday, usually at 1500 hours UTC. The content of these calls is decided by the ETC community. Each week anyone can submit questions and topic suggestions about anything related to Ethereum Classic. You can join the ETC Discord by visiting ethereumclassic.org/discord. This chat is held in the Community Calls channel. These calls are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and share. Before we begin this week, just a little bit of, a bit of an update on what the agenda was originally going to be. We were planning to have Financial Journey, who I believe is a YouTuber that talks about ETC, mostly about trading and that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, there's been a bit of an agenda change because of timings and stuff. So we will be falling back onto a kind of just open discussion with some last minute topics that we put together. Also, just a reminder that next week we'll be having Afri, who is, he used to be a Ethereum Classic hard fork coordinator, and he's going to be joining us to discuss, in preparation for the upcoming Mystique hard fork, some of the stuff that's involved in coordinating hard forks. So if you have any questions or would like to bring something up with Afri, please add your comments to the Community Calls channel and we'll put those to him. But we're basically going to try and dive into some of the pitfalls, what things can go wrong, what needs to happen, and how we can, in future, ensure that hard forks are coordinated, maybe in a more decentralized way, without relying on any or over-relying on centralized parties. So I guess one of the topics on the agenda today, and I'm glad you could join us, Henry, because this is kind of related to the SHA3 discussion, of which there's been a little bit of progress, I guess, in terms of where the discussion's going. And if you're on the Discord, there is a SHA3 specific channel under the ECIPs. I think it's ECIP 1049, where there's been some chatter going on about how things should move on the SHA3 front. And it seems that this week, generally, there's been a couple of voices from some of the more OG ETC community members. I believe Cody is pretty much against SHA3, and Fyro is of the opinion, I guess, that there needs to be some kind of counter proposal from the SHA3 guys in terms of how it should be implemented and some more details in terms of what should be done to actually get to a transition for SHA3. So I agree with Fyro. I'm open to SHA3 going forward as a potential upgrade, but I think the devil is in the details, and it's really important to get a switch correct so it doesn't cause a chain split and all of the potential downsides are mitigated as much as possible. And right now there is a proposal for having SHA3, but it doesn't really go into detail about how that transition is going to happen. So personally, I'm looking forward to seeing some more suggestions and detail about how that might happen. Henry, I don't know if you've been following that, but did you have any thoughts on the current state of the discussion?
We can't hear you, Henry.
I think Henry might be having some push to talk related issues, but we can just wait a few. I think I can see the mute is going off and on, so I think he's trying to unmute himself. I'll just wait a couple of minutes for him to come back. One sec. In the meantime, did anyone else have any comments on SHA3? Brolal, I think you brought up an interesting point about potentially spending too much time on the topic and it being a sink of resources. And I think it's gotten to the point where it's just getting back and forth without really making much progress at this point.
Yes, in my opinion, seeking this new standard of encryption and make it available to open public networks is something that I don't know. It's weird in these times because there's a real fight going on. Real people are arming themselves and doing exercises and securing information and tracking information and make it available for combat or other stuff. um, it may had to be centralized, because China being the main supplier of components and chips, I'm not sure is that trustworthy.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the whole switch to there's a lot of unknowns that need to be sort of quantified, and the case be made on the SHA3 side that it's actually going to be a net benefit without major risks, and that would include like explaining how the whole supply chain thing is going to be a better situation than what we have with Ethash. Hi Henry, I see you're back, but still can't hear you. I think you may need to configure your push to talk settings in the voice settings of Discord, maybe. Well, in the meantime, I just wanted to make a quick not announcement per se, but just an idea that I'm planning to implement in the next few weeks, I guess, which is the concept is the ETC meme machine, and the idea is a Twitter account that simply reposts images that have been posted in the memes channel on Discord, and systematically calculating the number of shares and exposure each image gets, and maybe have a different theme for each week, and then at the end of the week award some small prize in ETC to encourage the propaganda engine to churn out some memes. Oh, hey Henry, I heard you.
Hello,
Yep,
can you
yeah,
hear
we
me
got you.
now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, just I tried to reconfigure and the stupid thing just didn't work. Okay, so just to catch up on comments, I lost kind of the last few minutes trying to reconfigure. However, I'll look at this SHA-3 section later this week and we'll make some comments. We do have some ideas for a very graceful transition that will incorporate both GPUs and the transition of SHA-3. I'll update the proposal for that. Give me a few days. Probably again do it over the weekend. The idea is very much grin-like. So just to give you an overview, have both GPUs and SHA-3 on the algorithm, and then transition, split the proof of work and then transition over time. And basically, it'll split the proof of work. And to make a long story short, it makes the network resilient from any potential nefarious activities, because you got two proof of work activities. And then beyond that, you've got the ability of the SHA-3 side to fall back on GPUs and FPGAs, as ASICs come into play. So it should give the network worth. That will also eliminate any potential ASICs for any ASICs on the ETC side overwhelming the network, because we know that there's a ton of ETHAS ASICs out there if you look at the ramp on the network. But I'll go through all that, and hopefully I'll have that done by the weekend.
That's awesome. And yeah, I very much like the idea of a transition. I think it has a few benefits. But yeah, looking forward to seeing that proposal. I was wondering if maybe we could set up a dedicated sort of side channel discussion at a future date to fully hash this out and have like just a dedicated discussion for that, as opposed to it being on the weekly call. So if you're up for that, then we can sort out a date in the future.
Sure, we can do that. I don't tend to check my emails and stuff until very late at night, as you can tell. So that's so my response will be kind of very batched.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, Henry.
Looking forward to working more with the community.
Okay, great. So yeah, there's also on this note, I think there's potential to, if a transition does happen, to somehow do some like very long-term planning in terms of future transitions for ETC, because it might be necessary at some point in the very far future to transition again, or transition to SHA-4 or whatever that future algorithm is if SHA-3 becomes there's always the possibility that there's some vulnerability in SHA-3 at some point. and eventually all these algorithms reach their end of life anyway. So a transition seems inevitable at some point in the future, albeit a long time in the future. So maybe now is a good time to think about how future transitions could be made easier by designing some kind of upgrade that takes that into account. So it's not just a one-off SHA3 transition, but some other like algorithm generic transition upgrade process that we can reapply at future points.
Yeah, that all sounds good. I think you probably want a policy in place as well on that to say that, the transition will take place with some notice to the community unless it's a major vulnerability. Again, I think the Grin guys did a good job there in terms of saying, there's a notification period. I'll look up the information and post it on post it as part of the proposal that we make.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so let's jump into the next sort of mini agenda item that I put together. And this is riffing on one of Cody's messages discussing, it was related to SHA3, but basically he felt there's a lot of things that could be worked on and had time spent in terms of developer focus for Ethereum Classic. And his list involved layer 2, chain link integration, bridges, on-ramps, tuning the gas fees, rebranding, and I added versioning into there. So it seems to me there's a good list of, they're not all sort of protocol upgrades. I believe only tuning the gas and maybe rebranding would be in that category. But there's definitely a lot of stuff for development to be spent on that's a lot less controversial than SHA3. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and maybe we could use future calls to start trying to prioritize some of these side quests, if you like, for Ethereum Classic, and try and put together some kind of list of what we want to push for in the coming years. I'm also kind of intrigued that Cody believes that a rebrand is a good idea. And when I first thought about it, I was like, yeah, it's probably a bad idea, but I'm open to potential things. And there is a good argument, I guess, that at this point, Ethereum Classic is no longer Ethereum, really. It's its own sort of thing. So maybe there is a good reason to rebrand. But at the same time, it's quite a big undertaking and might not be essential and might actually be negative long term. Any thoughts on that?
Given the fact that this technology is very, very early and mass adoption is just starting, we can see an increase in adoption about 2,300% last year. The numbers will show up in a few months, probably showing a trend in that direction. So getting ready and having everything in order and a good image could be a new start, just like the DAO for the treasury. Or
Yeah, I think image is important. And Ethereum Classic is kind of unknown for most people, and maybe a rebrand would be at least an opportunity to make it sound less like, I guess a lot of people when they hear Ethereum Classic are going to think, oh, Ethereum Classic must be just a rip-off of Ethereum and a fork of Ethereum and trying to cash in on Ethereum's success and came after Ethereum in the same way that like Bitcoin Cash to Bitcoin. But in fact, it's the opposite. But that's not obvious just by the name. So I'm not sure how to solve that problem, or whether it even needs to be solved, but it's definitely there. But that being said, I think it would be a big effort and not something that is necessarily like fully supported in terms of, we had a brief discussion on this last time, but it seemed like most people were against doing a rebrand at this stage. And there's definitely some other less controversial things that people can like get together and work on. Coming to consensus about a name would be pretty difficult, I think.
I just want to add that a move to SHA3 would make sense for a rebrand in
Yeah, that's a
terms
good
of
point.
marketing.
It would definitely make sense to do it in unison with some kind of big upgrade, because then there's like a justification for doing it. instead of just, oh, we've decided to rename and there's no actual change.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think it's probably the kind of thing that would be worth hiring some like professional, like marketing firm to do, as opposed to it's not really a thing that's easy to do open source.
Yes, it needs someone from this crypto field. We have seen already companies flourishing in different aspects of crypto. So crypto is not just some value; it also transforms in jobs and marketing and joining the other markets in more aspects.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there are some marketing teams that are dedicated to just crypto projects. Proof of work is one that comes to mind, I think. They can be pretty expensive. Although hopefully after the mega pump of 2022, then there might be some spare change left in the coffers. Hey, Git Ronan, are you speaking today? I do have an agenda item related to the ETCDAO and some updates.
Hey, what's going on? I'm just waking up actually over here. I haven't had a chance to look at your agenda or anything. I just saw that a community call was going on.
Yeah, cool. It's this is a bit of a last minute agenda. We were supposed to have a guest, but that didn't work out. So we are falling back into just general chit chat basically. And I saw that there was some movement on the ETCDAO discussion, right? I mean, we didn't really discuss it too much last week, but I know that you tried to create a Gitcoin account and link that to ETCDAO.
No, I haven't done that yet. I figured that was I have made a Gitcoin account way back in the days, so I remember that was a pretty easy thing. What I'd like to do is I think that it's tied to a wallet. I can't remember if Trezor or Ledger is supported. If it is, I like to have a clean seed tied to a wallet like that, so it's not commingled history with anything. And then, I mean, it might be a MetaMask, and if it's a MetaMask, obviously it's less secure. But yeah, my thought was yeah to just get a name set up. What I did see in Gitcoin was that there was an Ethereum Classic name already set up. And so I don't know who has ownership of that name in Gitcoin, but we should try to figure that out and see if they'd be willing to give that name over for the ETC DAO. If not, we obviously could create a different name, but just the formal name would be really nice. I imagine it's ETC Labs because I think that they used that at one point for, as Stev was saying on the last call, for those bounties back in like, what was it, 2020, I think, was when ETC got integrated into Gitcoin.
Yeah, that sounds about
So
right.
so anyways, so I think the first question would be to try to figure out who the heck owns the Ethereum Classic handle. I think that would be wonderful to have as part of that, just in terms of legitimacy. If not, we can always get creative. We can always work around that, but it'd be great to have that handle involved.
Yeah, for sure. And I think once there is an address that I wonder if that address can be a multi-sig. And if not, fine. But it would be good to have an address so that we can at least start playing around and maybe use that as an opportunity to make sure that the community fund can operate and maybe just have like a very tiny amount of ETC loaded up in there from the community fund so that we can, do some test bounties.
Yeah, and I think that would be a great thing, is to start putting together a list. I think you added me in that organization on GitHub. And so if we can maybe get like the templates set up for, submitting a proposal, kind of like what we do on the what we have, for community engagement on the Ethereum Classic website. If we had that type of system where, people can submit proposals, then they go through a review and get approved into a queue, and maybe there's just like a little bulletin board. I don't know what's on your plate, but if that's pretty easy to set up, that'd be great. I do have Ethereum Classic domain assets, so I can redirect like a formal domain to it. Or, if you want to do Ethereum Classic DAO or something, I bet that isn't even registered. But anyways, if we can get it to that point so that then we at least have, a list of the small projects, small bounties, and then we can start selecting what we want to put onto Gitcoin, and then start getting those in motion. I mean, we really probably, I don't know if maybe for this, we were talking last call, we were talking, do we need a legal entity for this or not, based on the tax forms? We need a legal entity, then we need to talk about that. And so that's really my thoughts on it right now of where it's at.
Yeah, cool. I think that's a good next step, and it's not too much effort to set that up. I think just like a basic, like a no frills Gatsby installation, similar to the website, but how we can like merge in pull requests in terms of adding proposals and that kind of thing, or at least, like I'm guessing the system would be we can create bounties ourselves, but also people can submit proposals that are not bounties.
Yeah, I would have it similar to like the ECIP, where someone can submit something, and then what it ends up doing is once it's approved, it auto generates that ECIP dot ethereumclassic.org, you know.
Yeah, okay.
But we don't have to be on the .org. We could be on the .org. We have to figure out the domain thing. But I would just have it build like that. And exactly what you're saying is, it doesn't have to be like flashy right now. It can really be the MVP and just be, very bland and generic, and essentially a bulletin board of proposals.
Yeah. Part of me feels like it would be a good idea to separate the name in terms of properties, so it's not associated with Ethereum Classic like
Yeah,
itself.
I actually think that's good, and then that makes sense actually now that I think about it, and maybe that is better for Gitcoin as well instead of using that handle.
Yep. And then there's also no risk then of another like repo takeover style thing.
Yeah, and I think then it doesn't we saw that with ETC Labs where it was very confusing if the Ethereum Classic was a centralized group or not. So I think you're right now that I'm thinking a little bit clearer in the morning. I do think that makes sense to make sure that it's really easy to distinct that this is not the network itself paying people.
Yeah, for sure. And any like separation of concerns is beneficial, I think. If things go wrong, we don't want it to be associated with the main project, basically. And I'm guessing like this doesn't matter too much, but ETCDAO, just as a name, is fine. We have the GitHub, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fine. I think maybe we should look into the assets for that.
Yeah,
Um,
let's nab some domains.
snap some domains, and then probably the Gitcoin. And then I think Gitcoin is tied to a GitHub account. So we might want to, opposed to like registering our personal accounts or something, we might want to make a Gitcoin account, maybe tied to some email that is maybe associated with the domain that's with it or something like that, and then tie the multi-sig address to, or I'm sorry, the Gitcoin address that's used. And I think it's a or anyways, I think that you decide your either deposit address or something like that. I got to look through it all. So I'm just kind of talking out of what Stev said and what I remember like years ago. So, but anyways, we should have fresh accounts for it. We need to make sure that we make fresh accounts. And if anyone's listening and trying to jump ahead on making them, we'll just we'll just adjust the name or whatever. But hopefully that's all available. I imagine it's very specific naming. So
Yeah, let's do that straight after this call before I publish it to YouTube. If you're listening on YouTube, then don't even try. The names are already taken. Okay, good. So I think that's it's actually a very good start, and because there's no contracts, there's no complicated stuff. It's basically just organizing in GitHub. So it has the potential to solve a lot of those low-hanging fruit problems in a very like minimal effort way. So I think we stumbled into a pretty good solution for now. And if anyone is interested in joining us on the quest of helping manage this new DAO project, then feel free to jump in. Any help is appreciated. And you can either reach out on Discord or go into github.com/ETCDAO and add an issue if you want to contribute.
Yeah. Yeah, and we should get a list of proposals. Can we do that in a chat or something so that we can start?
Yep, let's do that.
I think we should identify those low hanging things, and then we can look at the requirements for the Gitcoin submission, and maybe that's just kind of the framework of what we draft up for a proposal. And what I'm curious about is the budgets. That's what we got to figure out, is how much do these things cost, and we need to have some sort of accuracy there when we were applying a price. So we got to think about that, of like, this task costs $1,000. Is that reasonable? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to start off as low as possible, really, and work our way up if no one's biting. I think maybe a lot of these things will be picked up just out of interest, maybe. I really don't know how Gitcoin is working, but if there's rewards on the line, then I'm sure there's some developers out there, especially if it's an interesting project. And also, it would not just be limited to dev stuff, right? As far as I understand, does GitHub let you create bounties for literally anything? Like, post some images on Twitter? Or is it just limited to dev stuff?
I'm not sure. We can look into that. And then I do know that, there's all sorts of social engagement style marketing where it's, post this on Twitter, share it on Facebook, like it or whatever, and you can set up some sort of payment for that in ETC or something, like set up a wallet on ETC, to receive it. So I guess that would get people used to adjusting MetaMask to the ETC network. There's little marketing companies that do that. I don't know any off the top of my head, but like through projects through the last couple of years, I've seen the marketing wings on some of the projects I've done use those outfits. So I don't know what you guys talked about before I joined in, but if anyone has any resources on marketing and probably community outreach, I think that would be a great thing to add little ETC bounties to try to build the community and just kind of general awareness. Maybe you have them go and look at the history page, and read the history or something like that. Set up a I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Set up a wallet on MetaMask that you can receive funds for. Submit your address to somewhere so that they get added to a list so that they can receive the funds. And then read the history or do something. I don't know. Anyways, something that's just gets education out there on maybe what Ethereum Classic is and how it's different than Ethereum.
Yeah, they're good ideas in terms of they had like little quest things, right, where people had to do a series of like educational tasks and get small rewards for that.
Yeah, it reminds me of a Coinbase Earn. Have you ever seen that, where it's like they're earning like $3 in a token?
Interesting. And is there like a quiz that you do at the end?
Yeah, I think that it's like a little 5-minute thing, and then they make $3 in the coin that they just learned about. And so I remember that started up in, I want to say 2018 is when they launched that. Maybe it was early 2019. But I remember that really took people by storm. And I think the great thing about that is, like, maybe to some of us in more developed nations, like $3 doesn't sound like much. But to some other people who really either maybe they might be young and they don't even know, they don't have funds or whatever, or they're just, from a less developed country, $3 might go a long way. So it could be material in some people's perspective, and in other people's perspective, it's not really. But it's, hey, at least I learned something, right? I'm getting paid to just sit here and read and learn about things.
Awesome, yeah. I'm just imagining the questions now. Like, which of the following is the longest running uninterrupted blockchain? Ethereum or Ethereum Classic?
Yeah, and you can. I think that's a great spot if we do those type of educational campaigns to really highlight, kind of, that there are a material amount of transactions on Ethereum Classic, despite what people think, you know, and just kind of explain protocol parity, how everything built on Ethereum can be built on Ethereum Classic, how Ethereum Classic is a little bit slower and less centralized. I mean, there's just so many things that that you can hit on that hopefully if you're doing those and you're doing that community outreach, hopefully we start getting new blood into the Discord, and we start, you know, and they'll be learning and going through all the stages of learning about the DAO hack and how it all happened. Because quite frankly, I just don't think that many people, definitely in the new wave, these people don't know very much about Ethereum Classic at all. They're all tied up and fascinated just by a type of smart contract, which cracks me up. The NFT stuff, it's like, man, this stuff has been around forever. It just cracks me up. It's like lightning in a bottle. So hopefully we can get those people to realize that NFTs, multiple NFTs, you know, that stuff's been on Ethereum, the original Ethereum Classic, the original chain, all the way since back in 2015. So
Yeah, this is a really awesome, massive value potential thing, and is gonna potentially pay massive dividends. Like if it costs $3 to incentivize someone to learn about ETC, and then they become like, oh wow, this is legit, and then start like shilling ETC, or shall I say, contributing to Ethereum Classic, that's real value for money and massive low hanging fruit.
yeah, and I think it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ross. I've been talking quite a bit.
The
You
easiest
guys
way
be going
to
back and
do
forth a
it.
little bit. I was thinking airdropping to projects that are currently on Ethereum, making a parallel token on ETC, but not just one-to-one, like with one coin, maybe like a mix of coins. I don't know. I mean, some type of airdrop. Maybe some type of airdrop, but you gotta, you know, measure it right. You have to have a good way of reaching the right amount of people.
Yeah, I think there's value in that if there's value in the coin. I just want to highlight that like back on the 2017-2018 run, people tried that a lot, and they ended up airdropping you like meaningless coins, and just the transaction fee to send those coins, even back then when it was like $3, wasn't even worth cashing them in. So what we always called them in the exchange world was like crypto barnacles, just because like we have an address that's active, and you look in and I have 1,000 coins of tokens. I have no idea what the hell they are.
Well, oh well.
So, well, it's just a thought. It just means that if you're gonna airdrop it, you know, like there is a cost associated with airdropping, and then there's a cost associated with the customer claiming the funds because they have to send the transaction, and so you got to think about that as
Yeah.
well.
There are ways
So
to.
I was thinking. So my answer to that. Is my contract, because I can do something on the floor, and then, you know, with the DAO rising up, the value of what I've distributed will also increase, and it's also evenly. Yeah, it's a small amount that's at the base, or everyone gets a small amount that's at the floor. So that's my thought. That's my answer to that. But you're right when it comes to other things, though.
I mean, there are ways to do
Yeah, I'm
airdrops.
not trying to discourage you. I was just trying to say that there's about a wave of projects. So I would just look into those waves of airdrops back in 2018, I think. I mean, it's been prevalent for a while that people have done that, but there was a serious wave during that ICO boom. That was the way it was. Instead of doing raises, then people were doing airdrops, and then you claim some, and then they hope that people would trade them on like Fork Delta and Ether Delta, were the markets back then, or the decentralized markets. So you could just spin up a market with no liquidity, and people would start populating trades. But it had all these on-chain fees. So what
Right.
ended up happening was you had a ton of tokens that they thought they would do that strategy, but they had no intrinsic value on it. Whereas I think with your project, if you build value for the token, if it has that intrinsic value, then that is a model that's perfectly tangible and logical. So don't be discouraged by that. I was just trying to highlight that that has been tried before, and a lot of people fail at it, but usually because they don't have any tech that they're really selling it. Smoke and mirrors.
I'm just making conversation too. You know, it's the weekly call. I got to say something. But yeah, I get your point. Yep.
Okay.
I
Astoria,
spoke to OCG from Saturn, and then to the side, I spoke to I don't know if you guys know Carol Carter from Saturn. No, nobody here
No.
knows a Carol Carter from Saturn.
What's going on with Saturn? Kevin just posted last week that in the chat that they had some sort of they went under and took a bunch of customer funds on ETC. Is that right?
So I know something happened a while back where I think when ETC pumped, Neuron dipped, and I guess nobody heard anything from them, and then they shut down the site.
I had it turned into like an African movie selling website or something. Kevin mentioned that on a previous call.
Yeah, it was really bizarre.
So what about Saturn that you wanted to mention?
Oh, bridges. They're talking about bridges to ETC, and making some incentive or making something on ETC, and then making a bridge to bring people over, incentivize people to come over. And I was thinking that's key to whatever I guess the strategy is we're developing, because bridge means people can trade the assets they currently have, or not just trade but also use the assets they have on ETC for whatever reason.
I kind of like your airdrop idea. If it was done in a slightly more efficient way, and not just like bomb a bunch of useless tokens onto random accounts, but have some kind of incentivization, almost like a faucet, as opposed to an airdrop where people can request stuff, and if they have a certain thing, they can sign a message and claim their free NFT or whatever.
Yeah, I think a faucet really sounds nice by request.
Yeah, who can not want free ETC, right? I mean, if it's only a tiny amount and the price of ETC is still pretty low, then as long as it can be, you could use Ethereum mainnet as a means of Sybil resistance for the faucet. So basically, every wallet with more than 0.1 ETC, sorry, 0.1 Ether, can sign a message and claim 0.00001 ETC or something like that. So they have enough gas to make one transaction on ETC, which can then, kick off some interesting stuff.
We can set up a Discord trivia about ETC and maybe put a price there.
How does that work? I've never run that kind of thing on Discord. I'm not very familiar with Discord in general. Have you done that before?
No, I haven't done that, but I know this is possible because I have looked into it and show it to the admins. You basically make a channel and you run a bot with questions, and users can respond.
Is it like a competition and the winner gets a prize?
Yes, it's basically what it was during IRC times, but way better.
During what time, sorry?
During IRC, you know Mirk or IRC? IRC channels.
Oh, IRC?
Yes.
Man, it's been a long time. Yeah, I think there's definitely. Go ahead.
With a price on a score or something like that. Yeah, I think it may make ETC more popular.
Right, and it forces people to join the Discord as well. Yeah, lots of great ideas here. I think one of the problems we have with these calls is that there's no write-up at the end and no like kind of action items. So I'm going to try and find someone to transcribe these calls and maybe put together some meeting minutes so we can reflect on them after, because there's a lot of good ideas generated here.
Yeah, I think that's a smart idea, is meeting minutes and maybe some sort of to-do list afterwards, of goals, to check in like every week. Hey, these were the things that we wanted to try to work on. Has anyone made any progress on that?
Yeah, I think I'll check out Fiverr, see if there's any virtual assistant or something that can help with that.
Great. And for the record, I secured ETCDAO.org. So that'll
Awesome.
that's what we should probably operate on.
Yeah,
the
nice.
.com was taken. It was registered back in 2017. But the .net and .org were easy to grab. So
Excellent.
that's what will be associated with that repo.
Okay, great. Maybe we can also get some emails set up.
Yeah, I just set up ETCDAO org at Proton, just so that we have something, and then I'm doing the GitHub right now. I'll link an account to that, and then I'll do a Gitcoin. So please, whoever's listening, please don't do that. I got the email. I'll have it done in an hour.
Efficient worker.
Working from my bed over here. I got to get out and get some coffee, man. These early calls.
Henry, I saw you chiming in there. Did you want to say something?
No, it's I got to reconfigure my push to talk. I have it set to spacebar right now, so I'm typing.
Okay, no worries. Well, yeah, we're coming up to the hour. It's been a bit of a sort of shorter one this week compared to last week, which was 2.5 hours. But if we're targeting at 1 hour this week, that leaves us with about 10 minutes. So if there's any open discussion, the floor is open if anyone wants to bring up any topics.
Yeah, Astoria, I'd like to, regarding those social assets and stuff like for the DAO and such, we should try to think of a way where we can share those so people can use them like related to that project. So, it's not just me or you holding it, so that we can open it up. I think that you can do LastPass Vault where maybe the password isn't shown, but at least people can log into that. And then if that's not sufficient, I'm welcome to any ideas, but I'm just trying to think off the top of my head of how we get it so that just one person isn't running that DAO, and we set it up so, like if I disappear, or, you never know how life goes. So, it just keeps running after that.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds good. I'll create a discussion in the repo for that. See if I think the idea of a shared vault is pretty good. I do wonder if there's any. I guess it depends on the domain registrar that you're using, but some of them allow multiple accounts and stuff. I'm not sure, but we can look into that offline.
Yeah, and for the DNS and all that, I'm happy to just transfer it wherever, wherever that needs to go. If we find a good solution for that, that'd be wonderful. Yeah, so let's just try to. I think it's important to try to start thinking about that now, so that we can start building it up from the foundation with that decentralized, forward thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to start off not really a DAO, is it? It's just going to be. I mean, it's still technically decentralized. It's not very autonomous though, but maybe one day it will evolve into more than just an off-chain thing. But if there is at least a multi-sig element to it, then it could be considered somewhat of a DAO.
Well, and I think what we had spoke about was we're going to try every approach right now. So just opposed to just going down one lane, to make sure. I mean, we'll do low hanging fruit, but just try whatever approach to try to stir up engagement in it, and then get things in motion. Low hanging fruit proposals shouldn't be contentious in any sort of way. They're probably not too capital intensive, and it just starts getting some sort of formalized progress happening. It's just, I think it's what we all wish kind of those private teams would have done, but instead they all had like their own little agendas and private projects. And when they're all said and gone, it's like outside of the clients and protocol parity, there's just a lot of things that you're like, what did you guys do over the last 4 or 5 years? Like you guys had tons of money, and you guys just mismanaged the hell out of it in terms of trying to help the network protocol itself and building on top of it.
It does bring up a good point, and like the obvious question is what is the mission of ETCDAO? Is the goal to just in a very broad way increase adoption, increase the value of the chain in some way, or is it eventually to make money? Because I'm assuming, I'm assuming that we're all, well, to some extent ETC holders. So like indirectly by adding value to the chain, even if the DAO itself doesn't have some profit-making mechanism in it, it is in a way benefiting us all by taking part.
Yeah, I would also I would think like what we had talked about on that last call that we had was, or at least I had brought up, was creating kind of a positive feedback loop so that you're not reliant on third-party funding, which has been an attack vector on Ethereum Classic development is, I mean, what we're seeing with ETC Co-op is they're relying on grayscale funding, and it might expire, right? So it's just that unknown isn't good in terms of network stability and longevity. And so I think some of what we should be building, I do appreciate the community outreach, because that's bringing more people in, the educational goals, bringing people in. But in my head, I think the highest priority is probably to, if we end up using some of those community funds, is making sure that anything that we really spend to use that community fund will multiply that fund over time. So those initial seed donations really grow as not only ETC grows in value, but also the entire stack grows, so that then we're funding, positive feedback protocols like the AMM example that I said, where, 0.1% would go back to the DAO fund of every transaction, like a little transaction fee, almost like an exchange fee. You just make it comparable to that, but those funds go back into the DAO, so that then they can fund another protocol that will then have that same transaction fee. So now you have two protocols that every transaction is now funneling back into the DAO. And now you have, you can start developing the third one. And all those are on chain. So what does that do? That adds value to the network, that fills up blocks with transactions, which generates the fee market. So now miners are now getting more revenue because of filled blocks with ETC fees. And then what does that trigger? That triggers the scaling issues that we all need to address. It's the elephant in the room. We've seen the scaling problem on Ethereum. So, once that fee market is live and active, then all of a sudden we go, hey, we have a big priority on the network protocol. We need to start addressing scaling and this fee structure, because it's not sustainable to have $50 transaction fees. We might as well be the clearinghouse, right? That we all tried to escape from. So
Then we can launch an
I
L2 and
think
take
just
fees
that
from that.
natural progression. I think that, and I think a DAO would be a great avenue for that. And then having that positive feedback loop will make it so that we're not having to go and ask Grayscale to be donating their maintenance fees to us, and you're not having to do that. People can certainly do that. That would be wonderful, but the network will go on for a long time and survive if you build it in that way.
Yeah, I think you've totally nailed it there. And I really like that model, especially because, and for me, like, if there's no dividends, that makes it a lot more legally, like, reasonable. And if all the money, all the value that's created by the DAO that goes back into the DAO is then spent on creating new protocols as opposed to, like, cashing out, then I think it's much more, like, legally doable and comfortable.
Yeah, and as you were saying, I think everyone holds some ETC, so it ends up being that is the appreciation of your ETC is how the value comes back to you.
Right. And as you mentioned, with eventually the scaling problem will force solutions like L2. And this is another perfect example of one of those protocols that can feed back into the DAO in terms of fees.
Yeah. We've kind of, the EVM, we've watched how it's progressed, and I think it pretty much went the way that I kind of thought it would go. Just took awareness and adoption, and we started seeing that on ETH. And then, you saw once people start propping up these protocols, you start seeing the migration over to, like, Binance Smart Chain was one. What I will highlight though is that type of bridge, and this was something that Ross was bringing up earlier. The type of bridge that, like, why Binance Smart Chain actually kind of took off was because Binance, the exchange, had it so where you withdrew, you could select the network to Binance Smart Chain or Ethereum. And so I just want to emphasize that this is where, as someone that comes from an exchange space, where I see a lot of value with working with exchanges is getting Ethereum Classic into that list of, oh, you can withdraw your tether through Ethereum Classic at this fee, or you can withdraw your tether through Ethereum at this much higher fee. And so that'll really kind of bring that type of token adoption over. But right now, if someone brings a token over to Ethereum Classic, there isn't Aave, a lending and borrowing protocol. There isn't Uniswap, AMM market, and like a lush field of tokens. There just isn't that right now. However, the natural fee markets out there, if we had Ethereum Classic as a network in exchanges where people could withdraw to and it was much cheaper, you would definitely see that traffic start to evolve. And it's my intent over time, as this DAO kind of develops these protocols and everything, to use the people that I know in the exchange space and petition for them to and request them to add the Ethereum Classic network embedded into those withdrawal systems. But you have to build the foundation first, and that's building these protocols that we've kind of identified out of the DeFi stack that add value in the long term and increase usage on chain.
Question about the bridge thing. Is there so there's two things that come to mind. One is there already a standard framework that can be easily deployed on ETC? And then number two, what is required in terms of centralization, in terms of operating the bridge and acting as a custodian?
Yeah, so there is a bridge. You can go to Binance and you'll see that they have a page that's a bridge, and it kind of goes through. I think we could prop something up like that pretty easy and set up the contracts. If we could build it, I think that's a decentralized approach as well, because I think they run on DPoS on Binance Smart Chain. So I mean, the entire chain is centralized in my opinion. But I think that we could probably pull their contracts, and then we could pull that web interface. I don't know if it would be considered centralized just by hosting the web UI. I don't believe that that's the case. And then as long as we're not, there's no way for us to pause their funds or stop their funds or touch their funds in any way, we don't have the custody of them. So just by firing up the bridge itself, where it just transfers and it locks their old funds and then does the other thing, as long as we don't have the, what you always see in DeFi protocols is the admin key, right? That means that you could just drain everyone's funds if you wanted to. We can't design it with that in mind. So that in terms of custody, that's what we need to make sure any protocol that the ETCDAO fires up has no admin keys ever.
Right. This is another like super deep topic that we could get into on a future call. Lots of different questions come to mind, and different types of bridges and who's bridging to who. And I definitely see a benefit potentially of, especially after the merge, where you're going to want to have some smart contract layer to potentially transfer ERC20 tokens that is based on proof of work. So why not use Ethereum Classic?
Yeah, and I would say, so I've always just thought of this in terms of the exchange world and where you see the most volume. And I think that the Tether token is the highest value of a token to bridge over. So if you did USDT, and that's because of its transactions and because of its its volume of transactions. That's why. And then if you bridge that over, then on an AMM, you would be able to fire up a market that was ETC to USDT to Tether. So Ethereum Classic to Tether. If you have that market on our AMM that has a 0.1% fee that goes to the ETCDAO, so it has that positive feedback loop in, what you'll see is naturally, just by having that one market, every time ETC price moves to the US dollar on any exchange, you'll see high frequency trading arbitrage bots, which already exist on Ethereum. So it's very easy for them to adjust their code and run it on Ethereum Classic. You will see that volume, automated botted volume, which means that it works in the markets up and down. It's there every day. That volume will exist to keep that price in parity, the ETC to USD price in parity. And so I would focus on that. That is how you really build up any sort of exchange, is creating those arbitrage opportunities and keeping our AMM market in parity, on price parity with the centralized exchanges. And that is kind of the foundational volume for a network. So I hope that makes sense. I realized like ramble, but just as someone that comes from the exchange space, that is foundationally how you jumpstart volume and this type of trading. So that would be what I consider highest of priority if we're going to spend some big bucks. Would be AMM and a bridge with Tether. You do those two things, and then the community can fund that ETC USDT pool to earn the AMM fees for being a liquidity provider. Now all of a sudden you've added a use case to have an ETC, and you'll see a bunch of ETC get locked up, and that's how you prevent miners from selling off and trying to recoup their prices every single day, because they start locking up the ETC they earned into these interest-bearing assets, and they'll speculate for a longer time. Now you've locked up supply, the selling pressure goes down, price goes up on ETC, just natural market forces.
Yeah, really good vision. Let's do it. I was wondering though, why would it not make sense to have Tether natively issued on ETC as opposed to bridging it from some other less secure chain? Could it be possible to petition the Tether guys to deploy on ETC directly?
I mean, you certainly could do that, and or you could have them have a bridge. But my why I think of it in terms of, you don't actually even need them to you don't need them. You don't have to go through that political process and petitioning process to do it. If you just do a peg bridge where you're essentially locking up the Tether on the Ethereum side, and it's moving over to this side, and that's what we've seen with Binance Smart Chain. So they have a BEP version of USDT, and I believe that's the case. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that, but that's what I believe they have, and we see people use it all the time. And so whereas, like, to ask them to issue, because I think how they issue it is they issue like $1 billion, right? So they issue $1 billion and they send it somewhere, and now all of a sudden you have the attack vector of, now a 51% attack on ETC sounds really nice because it really is decentralized, and you have $1 billion block, right? So
yeah, and we have to be aware that 51% attacks plus DEX equals bad stuff. Like, at least normal exchanges.
Yeah, and if you add on like flash loans and all that shit, I mean, we'll see the same stuff that we saw with Ethereum. The only thing that we have the benefit of is we have the benefit of hindsight, and we can build stuff without the centralized admin keys, which I think that it blows my mind that companies like Compound are not under the SEC right now. Maybe they are. They do work slow. But they've publicly said they had an admin key, so they have custody of everyone's funds in that. But anyways, and then think about that 51% attack. Oh, sorry, I just hit my head. Think about that 51% attack, and where they're issuing $1 billion of Tether on Ethereum Classic, and then now you have an incentive to attack. Well, if you remember, Binance sent Bitcoin. I don't know if you remember this, but they sent Bitcoin, a ton of Bitcoin. Or no. Sorry, it was like a big hack or something. Do you remember when CZ caught all that flack? And he was like, hey, can I petition miners to reorg the chain Bitcoin? And he got all that flack. So we just have to be wary of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, by the time this stuff is all ready, it's probably going to be the case that Ethereum Classic is very, very difficult 51% attack, because it will be the only Ethash chain in the game at that point.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I just that was just kind of a note for your note about should we just petition Tether to print on Ethereum Classic right off the bat? And I don't think that our network's secure enough for the level of printing that they do. They usually print like $1 billion or something like that, and so I just don't think that we're there yet. But I think in the future, that will definitely be the case, because it's the same contract, same network. It's so easy to just migrate that over. But I think how we jump started originally is we don't need to ask permission. We can just set up that bridge and start. What I would do is I would just take $10,000, convert it to Tether, and then I hit it on the bridge, and then send it over onto ETC, and then I deposit it into the AMM account to along with ETC to make funds, and that's my contribution to jumpstarting the pool.
Yeah, cool. I think it would. I'd like to investigate the current sort of state of bridge technology and how like trustless it can actually be. But
Yeah, if you want to look at that, sorry, I'm gonna have to go soon. But if you look at that, I believe that it was Proof of Authority (POA). I believe that network set up the first rail bridges, and they had their XDAI to the ETH network, and then I believe they built one to the Binance network as well. So that's a good foundation. I think maybe ChainSafe also did a bridge. So that might be something to look into. And then we see one that's live already on Binance Smart Chain. So those would be like the big ones that I would research and look through and try to see where the centralized factors are in there and try to improve.
yeah, for sure. And ChainSafe has already, I believe they were expressing interest in building a bridge for ETC at one point in the past anyway.
Yeah, that's what I remember as well. And I have some friends that work at ChainSafe, so I can certainly ping them and see what's up.
Cool. In fact, we have Afri on next week. Maybe we can mention this.
Oh, that's right. And he's working at ChainSafe, right?
Correct. As far as his GitHub
Oh,
profile
perfect.
says.
Yeah, so that would be a better avenue. Let's have him on his call. Maybe he can speak to that.
Yep, he's joining us next week. So let's ask him bridge questions.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, I got to drop off. I got to get my day started. So thanks for the call.
Thanks for contributing, Git. Always a pleasure. See you next week. Okay, so again, floor's open. If anyone has any things to add on that or final discussion points that you wanted to bring up.
Hey guys, I don't have anything to say. I just want to say hi and chime in for the community call this week. Good hearing from everybody.
Thanks for joining us, ETC Punk. Good to put a voice to the ape. All right, final call for questions or comments, and I will wrap up otherwise. Okay, so that concludes this week's call. Thank you for all those who contributed and for listening and sharing this on YouTube. If we didn't cover something you'd like to discuss, you can always submit your questions and topic suggestions in the community calls channel, and we can bring it up in a future talk. Next week, we'll be having Afri, hard fork coordinator, to discuss a bunch of topics about hard fork coordinating. So we will see you next week for that at the same time, in the same place. So thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.